It's so good to speak with you. You pled guilty to multiple felonies committed when you were 18, including home robbery and invasion. But I want to get your read on some of the larger issues at hand here, starting with the high incarceration rate. Based on your experience, what would you say are the main causes?
So the three main driving forces behind criminality are socioeconomic factors. People who don't have access to resources, who don't have home or housing security or job security, mental health issues that are untreated, largely undiagnosed, and addiction.
Okay, pretty straightforward. And these are things that take long-term solutions and can't be solved readily. In your case, you were serving time and had petitioned for clemency because you're in Virginia, where it's a no parole state, and you were unexpectedly pardoned in 2021. Can you explain the thinking behind no parole, abolishing it, and the purpose it serves?
So there was a push for truth in sentencing back in the 90s, which was to get rid of parole because they said it wasn't fair to victims to say that someone's going to get 30 years and then they're eligible for parole at a time earlier than that. And I think that it's a noble idea, but it's ended up with this really problematic system. Because we have a system where the kind of worst guy in the world who gets caught for something minor, who we know is going to get out and reoffend based on everything he's doing in prison, can't be held for a longer time. We know this guy that got an extraordinarily long sentence. I had a buddy who got a 93-year sentence when he was 15 years old for a robbery in which the adult co-defendants all got 12 years or less. Well, he had no means of release prior to that, regardless of the fact that he turned his life around, that he'd done everything right, and that his sentence was excessive in the first place. So the intention is good, but I think that the way it works out is that we are letting go some of the guys that we shouldn't be letting go, and we're holding on to some of the guys who are long reformed. And the idea that this is serving victims, they're really only given this kind of single thing. Okay, we're going to punish this person, and that's going to make you better, which is a very old school kind of like Old Testament kind of mindset. Rather than saying, hey, you were the victim of a crime, we think you need treatment, you need resources, you need focus. We're saying, no, you don't need any of that. We're going to punish this person, and that's going to make everything okay, right. Which is, again, not very helpful to the victim.
Well, the pendulum always swings from the old school method to something a little bit more modern in terms of approaches and being more empathetic, and we're kind of stuck in that swing. Bring in race here, because that can always be pretty sensitive. You're white, and we have a number showing how black men are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than white men. Do you think being white played a role in your being pardoned?
In this case, I don't think so, because Governor Northam pardoned more people during his term than every governor combined in Virginia history. He did this extraordinary thing where he said, we have this major inequity in criminal justice, and we need to address this. And he did this across lines. I have a number of friends who were pardoned, all of whom but one are black. I think he actually took a comprehensive approach of saying, let's look at this. And because of those racial disparities, and because he pardoned kind of across the board the guys who really deserved it, he applied that, equally or based on those disparities. But I think in many cases, yeah, people get the benefit of the doubt. They have access to resources. If you just look at cash bail and the socioeconomic factor, where someone who goes behind bars and can't make bail and therefore loses their apartment or loses their car and loses all their stuff because they have no way to get out, versus somebody who can pay bail, we're literally punishing people for being poor for the same crime that they may later be acquitted of.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, socioeconomic definitely being the bigger driver in many cases, correlating with race. You clearly have had a lot of time to think about how to prevent people from committing crimes in the first place and ending up in prison, Jesse. Is this a matter of individual responsibility, or are there specific policy actions that can be taken in advance? How's your thinking changed on this?
Sure. Well, anytime we want to change behavior, because we know we have a lot of people making very bad decisions, right? Changing behavior requires willingness and it requires opportunity. So as we look at kids who are getting in trouble at school and whether we can change their behavior or change the direction of their lives, well, they need to have the willingness to change, which is a personal responsibility aspect, but they need to have the opportunities to be taught how to do things differently. They need to have the imagination that things can be different. There's so many guys that I ran to who were locked up who literally knew from a young age, well, I'm going to end up in prison or dead, so I might as well keep on this path, because no one ever gave them the hope or the belief or the possibility that they could do something else. And so there are programs and opportunities we can provide for people in school, in pre-detention, in jail, in different places. But unfortunately, that's costly, and it's not a good talking point for politicians.
No, and it takes years to pay off and to materialize. Very quickly, Jesse, as a final question, describe briefly for us the conversation about criminal justice reform that takes place among those who are in prison in the system. What do you think they say that would surprise people?
Well, people think that everybody in prison just wants to get out. There are a lot of guys in prison who know that certain people should not get out, because we have family members who are on the outside. We have people we love on the outside, and we don't want anybody to suffer. Like, regardless of the mistakes that we've made, we recognize there's a portion of the population that should probably never get out or needs a much more intensive treatment than anybody's providing today. But also we recognize that, it's fundamentally this guy over here who got that 93-year sentence, like he deserves a second chance. And there were guys who had done wrong their whole lives who said, you know what, I may not deserve a second chance, but he does. So there's a sense of understanding that some people got a really hard deal and that they can actually get out and contribute to the communities they harmed. Whereas other people say, you know what, I may have done my damage and I may be irredeemable. But I hope that the message can be that people don't have to be irredeemable and that we can find a way to contribute.